Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name's Matt Lehman. I'm the streamer for this channel, and we work on a Django project. And it's a Django project that's for a real site. It's called College Conductor. It's a software as a service. It is on the internet. It works. It does stuff. It is for college consultants, but most of the time you don't need to know about the details of what the product does, because we go into the guts of it and how I built it and try and show off lessons that you could learn or apply to your own Django skills, and just dig into stuff like that. I've been working on a project for a few streams about improving my deployment process. We are doing that by taking a bunch of the stuff that normally happens during deployment using Ansible, and we're pushing that all to the continuous integration service that I use, Circle CI, and building up an application bundle that includes the actual app code, all of the dependencies, the web server to run it, so that it's all one executable. And we've been working through the steps of that to get it going, and we're getting pretty close to the end. Last week we worked through a kind of a tricky bug that turned out to be something that I filed an actual ticket on the Django project for, which you can see here on this issue. Yeah, it was down in the weeds, but it was an interesting session on how do we debug these kind of apps. Now that we're past that one and we have a good handle on it, I think it's time to move into making the final tweaks to get the application put into the deployment properly, with setting things to executable, putting settings in certain places, all of that, so that I can actually take this amount of work and push it out to production and ship it, basically, because that's part of why we do this. The goal is to ship things and make it easy to ship things. So I'm going to drop some notes in here. Let's see, ask me anything about Python or Django. I have a chat going here. Please, if you're joining in, keep it civil. I've only had problems with that once. Fingers crossed that sort of stays that way. I will ban people if they get kind of crazy, but normally that's not an issue. I've got a bunch of other places you can reach me if you find this stuff useful. You can follow me on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube when I post the videos later. There's a website that you can look at. I've got a URL up above me, mattlehman.com, where you can get on a mailing list and get out posts that I post about. I try and post pretty meaty articles about once a month that I think are interesting for people to do Python development. And sometimes I post about Django and that sort of stuff. And that's what's going on with me. So if you enjoyed this stuff, I'd encourage you to do those things. It helps me out, helps me get discovered on YouTube, and get more people who could benefit from this kind of work and seeing how Django works in action. We're going to work from GitHub and work from this issue. So this is the issue we're working on. And you can see we've already checked a couple of the boxes here. And we'll get to the specifics of what we need to do, and so we can see it in action. The way that I've been doing this the past couple of streams is to kind of take the app, which I've already done all the bundling of and built it in CI and integrated it so that the deployment process pulls it down. But the final steps, the kind of the fit and finish that we were working through was not done yet. And we have to do that with some Ansible work. Ansible is the deployment tool that I use. And Ansible runs a set of steps, which they call plays, in playbooks, and that is how we're going to put it all together. The pieces that need to happen first is the bundle that I have is called a PYZ. It's actually a Shiv app, which I'll bring up. Shiv comes from LinkedIn. It uses a zip app format, and it bundles everything together so that stuff can just be executed. So that's the core unit that I've been putting together and working on getting out there. The Shiv app itself is the thing that I ship off to S3 after continuous integration is done, and deployment then reaches out to that S3 bucket and pulls down the PYZ file. That's the file extension that's used for Shiv apps. And that's as far as we took it. When that file was pulled down from S3, it was not set to be executable. So that's the first thing that we need to do, is once the thing is in the right place, we need to make it executable, because we literally invoke Python on it. Although now that I say that, maybe we don't need to make it executable. That's really curious. Well, we'll see. Let's actually try it. So I've got my staging site is a virtual machine, which is Vagrant. I'm using that as my tool, and this is where I've been poking around the last couple of weeks. So you can see that here's the directory, and I modified that so that this particular one is executable. That's the X flag that's here in all the permissions, if you're not super familiar with Unix permissions. So what that gives me the ability to do is, I probably have it in the history with the right invocation. Yeah, 187. So cool bash tricks if you want to learn something. History gives you everything that's in your bash history. And if you do an exclamation point followed by the number from the history and hit enter on that, it will fire off that command. Okay, so it's defaulting to a different set of settings. So I'm going to source the right set of settings, but that was the right pattern of using / and then the actual file name to treat it like an executable, to tell the operating system, hey, this is how you're going to run this thing. What I'm curious about is if we can just say a Python on it, because there's only, well, there's a bunch of them. We're using Python 3, so can we invoke it like this? Just use passing the file to that. That's what I'm curious about. Might have other side effects that we aren't aware of. Okay, that works. So that's cool. So now, another question about does it work is I modified stuff to also be a Django manage command, but it was positionally, it had positional dependencies on, and that still works too. All right, so maybe the easiest way to do this, all right, so there's two paths. So we can either invoke this using Python 3. That's one path. The other path is to mark it as executable and run that. I think for the simplicity of it, I think I would probably, well, both are simple in their own ways. One is simple in that you don't need to understand file system permissions. You don't have to elevate the permissions of making something executable. So that's got a simplicity to it. The other simplicity of having it be an executable is you don't have to pair things together. And I think I prefer that former method where it is an executable, and I don't have to call Python 3. So we're going to carry on with that strategy then. So the first thing to do is get the tasks that are associated with this, and then we'll see how this was pulled in and where it went, and then how we can mark it as an executable. We used the built-in AWS S3 module that comes part of Ansible, and we provided the bucket. We provided the actual name that we expected to find in the bucket, and we have a destination here. This is the thing that we want to be executable. So the first thing I want to check is if there's any mode flags on AWS S3, because because it's copying like locally, it might have an ability to set the file permissions during the copy operation rather than having a second call that changes the file permissions. So let's do that. Let's find the Ansible docs. Hey Ryan, welcome. If you got any questions for me, I'm here. So we're getting into copying some stuff today and fixing this up. So we're looking at the module. Yeah, you'll get, if you're a college student and you're getting into it, I think it takes experience, man. I don't know what else to say. Like, get some projects, go through some stuff. The more you try these things out, the more you'll feel better about what you're doing. Yeah, I think you'll be fine once you do it enough times. All right. So there is a mode option, but that's not referring to it's not file system permissions and stuff. How do I know? Experience myself. So, if I look back at my career, and I went to college, and I think you mentioned you're going to university as well, or yeah, you're a college student. I wasn't comfortable with my first computer science classes. Like, I went to a school that my high school didn't it was a fine school, but didn't offer any CS as like AP. So I came in knowing nothing about programming, and I was amongst a group of peers that did know quite a bit, and it was a struggle at first, to be honest. Um, but you get through that, I think. So stick with it is my advice. And ask people questions. Ask your professors questions. That's always helpful. It does, but it does take time. Yeah, and go to class. If your brother failed because he didn't go to class, well, there's some correlation there, I think. But college is not for everybody, and some people just won't go to class. All right, let's get back into how do I gotta remember how to set file permissions on stuff. That is one thing we have to do, and I don't remember which module to do it. So I'm hoping. Ah, here it is. So it's the file module. Yeah, flipping. If you're doing a first summer job, there's nothing wrong with flipping burgers, but I wouldn't make a career out of it. I agree. Okay, so let's bring up the Ansible file module. I have a friend of mine, a good friend of mine actually, he tried the college thing, and it didn't work with him. Like, where he was with life, he just was not ready for that. And he actually enlisted in the army and spent a good. He served a tour somewhere, and came out the other side as like the army improved him. That's what he needed. So that is a noble path as well. I got a lot of respect for people that go that way. I don't know the Air Force Academy in Colorado. So we want to take basically this kind of command here, the file, and down, or maybe up here, where we have this thing that we just pulled down from S3. I want to say, we'll name this set the app executable. So become is saying you're elevating permissions to use sudo. A lot of these operations need that. You can apply it for the whole playbook, but I like to do it on an individual basis, just so it's clear, like a clear signal to me that this particular task is running elevated. We're using the file module. There's the state. So we don't want directory, we want file. It's not a path, and it's not a hard thing. So I think we want to change this to file. And the path that we want is the same thing that we used up here. So I'm going to put that stuff there. Did I ever have an exam where the whole class average was an F? I don't, maybe. I had a brutal physics class 1 year, and it's the kind of class where I'm not sure the professor cared. I don't know what his deal was. He gave these kind of tests where the test was multiple choice, and there were like 5 questions total. So you get one of them wrong, you're immediately at an 80. You get 2 of them wrong, you're at a 60. That's how we're talking. And I remember the test had like options A through G. And the brutal part about it was, a lot of them had like the same answer, but it would be based on a bunch of like kind of calculus derivation sort of question, or a lot of computation. And the answers would be moved by a decimal place or off by an order of magnitude. So yeah, it was really easy to get stuff wrong. I don't know. It sounds like you have quite a bit of anxiety about college. Just do your best. And are you a new student, or have you already done it for a semester or so, or a year? That's what I'd wonder. Your grades will dictate quite a bit of how you feel about it. And if you're doing poorly, seek out help. And if you're doing okay, just embrace that you're doing okay. I don't know how else to say it. Okay, so we need to set the mode for this file. I think I used the octal system. That's what this 0 mode is, because I had issues with Ansible setting the right mode. Oh yeah, I mean, so if you're a sophomore, you've gone through your freshman year. Did you do okay freshman year? And if you didn't, do your best to seek out help from people. Oh, man, you got it. 3-2 and slacked a lot. I think if you applied, it sounds like if you applied yourself, you'd crush it. So yeah, go get it, man. Okay, so 750. So if you know how do I gotta say, probably should explain a little bit about how to do file permissions. I don't know how deep I want to go into this, but file permissions, if you're looking at stuff, and if you do an ls on a directory and you give it the long option, it gives you this thing right here. Okay, and ignore the first character. Well, you can pay attention enough to know that D stands for directory, a dash is for a normal file. There are other options, but most of the time you're not dealing with them. So the bit that you want to pay more attention to is these 9 characters here. This stands for read, write, execute of varying levels. So the first one, read, write, execute of the particular user. And then the second one is read, write, execute of the group. And then the third one is read, write, execute of the entire operating system, I think. So, and you got to think of each of these is 1 bit. It's either on or it's off, okay? So you've got read, write, execute, 3 bits, okay? Gets us to 111 in binary is the most you could have, which is in a base 2 system, that's the number 7. So hopefully that makes enough sense of explaining it, of what that number means, and then what the actual read, write, and execute themselves mean for a file is maybe not supernatural, but R is can you read the file? Write is can you modify the file? And execute is can you tell the operating system to try and run this as a binary that it will execute. I don't know how else to say that. If I just pulled this down from S3, and let's pretend that the system is like that. So we can take this thing and we can change the mode, that's chmod, that's what that stands for, and subtract the executable bit from every one of the columns. And if we do that, what we have now is you can see the color changed on my shell. That's just some nicety. But the important point here is that the thing that was an X is now a dash. And so what the effect of that is the command I ran earlier of /conductor, it's going to say permission denied. And the permission that's denied is that I don't have the executable bit set on. So that's what we're going for here when we're modifying the thing that we brought down. What I want to have happen with this particular file is I want the file to have read, write, execute permissions for the user, the owner, and 5 is like 101. I'm about to like give you the finger, sorry. 101, and that in binary means 5 and refers to read, no write, execute. So it says that the group that the file is in could modify or could execute the file, run it, but not actually change it. So I think this is actually the right mode that I want for the file. Okay, so that gets the executable part. And I think from there, that's probably enough to run a deploy, make sure that it downloads the latest thing, and makes it executable. So let's try it out. So I'm going to get out, well, I'll open up a new shell. The way that I can do a deployment from here is I can run Vagrant Provision, which hooks into Ansible and will run all the tasks. And we will see right away if I got this right. Whoops. Looks like I messed up. Oh, I didn't mess up. I don't have Vagrant can't see Ansible right now. I need to activate the virtual environment. So let's try that Vagrant Provision command again. So now it should be able to see Ansible and actually run through the playbook. Yeah, crazy curves. Yeah. So finishing off that physics story. Like the tests were insanely hard, but what happened was everybody was on a curve, and so the average student usually got like 2 of them wrong. So the average was like a 60, but we ended up doing fine. Although the students, the professor was like not good in a lot of ways, and his lectures would look something like this. He'd go through the famous derivation for whatever a physicist had solved, like I'm not going to butcher any of the names that I don't remember anymore, but something that was the life's work. Some of these physicists, he'd get through their derivation of how they got there, but then he's trying to cram it all into a single lecture time. So at the end of the lecture, he'd be running out of time, and he'd slam through the last part of the derivation, which of course was like the genius moment that that these people had. So you'd miss the kernel of what happened. Okay, what's missing? Collect static failed. Why did you fail? Oh, from last week I left a breakpoint in there. Oops. This would not happen in production. So Yeah. Let's go back. Let's fix that because I'm not going to remember to do that otherwise, and we're not going to be able to get past the problem if we don't. Let's go to the virtual environment and go to lib, Python. I was doing a bunch of debugging last time, and I put a debugger into the package, which you shouldn't do most of the time, but I did. Okay. It was in contrib static file storage. There it is. Put it right here. This is the source of the problem that we had last week. Whoops, that's read only, so it's not going to work. Okay. So, oops. Now the deployment wouldn't get blocked, but the important part of the deploy that we were looking for anyway actually happened above. So it's good that we got that failure, because otherwise I'd be confused later when we were doing a bunch of other stuff. But we have this line right here, set the app executable, which is what we named it. And so let's go to the apps area. And is that the name of it? Is that the latest one? Conductor 7512. Maybe that's the last one we did. Okay. Have I not been pushing these? That's probably it. Yeah, that was the last thing that we committed. So this is so what happened, the way I've been naming these is the package name has, what does it have in it? It has the git SHA here, sorry, it's blanking out. And that gets put into what I upload to S3. That's how I'm gonna uniquely tag these, because the part that I'm getting in the deploy, wherever it went, is that name. Oh, is it over here? So I ask the git fetch for what's the SHA. That's still going to be a problem in the future. I'm not sure I thought through how we're going to get that once the git clone is out of there, but we'll figure it out. So the thing is now the latest one, it is executable, which is, and it's in the mode that we want. So the next thing to do, and actually let's go back to that issue, check this off. Okay. The next thing to do is to get rid of the settings. So when I was hacking this together, I took the settings directory that's here, and it has all the settings we need in it, but I just copied it. I copied it from a different location, and that was just for the point of getting to the end. So let's drop a note in here in case somebody shows up later. So next thing we're working on, get settings in Ansible. So the way this needs to work is, like, if I ever destroyed this server and started up a new one, I don't want to have to go in there and copy the settings directory over. That's totally the wrong way to go. So I need to tell Ansible to take my setting stuff and put it there. Well, one problem that I'm going to have with this is that the settings don't live within the Ansible playbooks. So I need to check if I can look at files that are above the Ansible directory and copy that whole directory. Because what I want to do is I need to copy in all of the settings here, and then also create this secrets file, which is another task we can get to in a second. So I'm going to start by removing the whole settings directory. Oops. I'm going to give myself the right permissions to do it here, because I want to simulate like this is a fresh server. And now if we go back and try this app again, it's going to immediately complain like I don't know where the settings are. Also, it's going to complain that it doesn't have permission. Why did it do that? It has execute. Oh, because I'm not the... I am the Vagrant user and not the dub user. So it's now complaining about that, rightfully so. So we're going to change to root, and we're going to change to the dub data account. Can't run it that way. Okay. How can we simulate running it as the dub data account? And there's probably some option to sue. Is it? Yeah. Like a command. There it is. Okay. So we say sue, and then we want to give it this command, and that path is at serve apps conductor. That's still not going to work, or it'll give the local host address, which is okay. It doesn't have the settings though. Good grief. Environment. All right. The other way I can do this for now, since I'm just trying to test this out and I don't want to be someone that's not the Vagrant user, is change the world access here. So don't let this be world executable. So I'm going to call it 5 for now. And what that's going to do is give everybody the ability to read this file, which should let the Vagrant user do it like previously. Rep for Django. Oh, it's gone. Okay. Got the settings module to write the settings. And let's come over here and run the provision again. So this will go through, and now it will change the mode. Ansible is going to notice that the permission of the file does not match what it's supposed to be, what I had set it to. So it's going to, instead of reading OK, it'll say changed, which is what we want. And once it's run past that line, we can ignore the rest of the deployment. And then I wonder if it's pulling from S3 every time. Maybe it is. You can ignore the rest of the deployment because it doesn't really matter. But now you can see the read and the execute bits are set for at the global world level. So now if we try this, it should just do the right thing. But it won't do the right thing because that's what we intentionally destroyed to prove that it is broken. It can't find the settings because I destroyed that directory. That's good news. So we're going to let that run for a little bit. So there's a place in here that has secrets where currently this is copying the secrets area to the settings. And we're going to need to do this again for the new settings directory, because this path, this app path, is referring to where the conductor clone is. It's basically a thing that's probably going to go away after we get all the clone done. So we need to copy an entire directory. Ansible copy directory. And it's what's going to be interesting about this is, can we get to the right, refer to the right path? Because the way Ansible wants to get things is looking in the role. So this role has handlers, it has tasks, it has templates, and some of them have like files. These are things that you can just directly copy and it'll know about. But we're getting to a point where we're more interested in files that live above Ansible here at this directory as a peer. So we have to tell Ansible to get that directory. Whoops. I just totally hit a button in Vim and I switched the order of this. Where'd it go? And it's got these files in here. So we don't, when we do deployments, we don't want to deploy PyCache or swap, but we really want these Py files. That's what we want. And we don't even want this local secrets, because that's something else. So what's the right way to do that then? I'm not really sure, to be honest. And let me walk you through briefly. Do I have this open somewhere else? No. This is the settings file that we have. There's a couple of them that a settings file is what Django uses to read all of its settings. It's an actual chunk of Python code versus some kind of static thing. And it is everything that Django needs in order to find all of its stuff. That's why we need to get it to the app. So since I don't really know what I'm doing at this point, let's search around. So copy directory outside of playbook. What we want. Let's see what they have to say. I'm not sure this is what I want. This is about remote copying. Not really what I'm looking for. So the other thing we can do here, if we don't want to copy the whole directory, which I may not want to, I may want to pick just the minimal stuff that's going to be needed, which will be the base settings file and the settings file specific to that environment. So in the example of this Vagrant machine, it'll be this staging file, and we would need this init file and the secrets file. So I guess 4 files to get it all going. But if you look, there's not that many more. So that's why I'm thinking maybe if we can do it in just a single copy operation, that would be beneficial. But I don't know that I like that because it's also going to copy these PyCache directories, which is not cool. Because they're from my Mac OS and they have nothing to do. There's no real reason to copy them over to a Linux server. Python will gladly ignore them and like regenerate them, I think. But it's just one more thing to not have to worry about. So I'm looking for there's a source option down here. Okay, this is cool. So maybe we can go up, like just navigate using a relative path to go up to the directory we want. If the path is a directory, it is copied recursively. If the path ends with a slash, only inside contents of the directory are copied. If it does not, okay, so this is important. So we need to call it, wherever the path we are, we need to find the right thing, and we need to not end in slash. Let's go back to the web playbook. Let's go to where that secrets file is down here. We want to do name, and we want to copy settings directory. It's the action, and it's the copy module, and our source. This is where I'm not sure, because it depends on where Ansible is going to execute this from. I don't think it's going to be from the position of this playbook, which is deep down into the role. I think it might be from like where Ansible is called. That's curious. So if Ansible is called at the root, how do we get the settings directory? I think it's because the settings directory is also at the root. So I'm going to use a relative path like this and see if that gets the right thing. No slash, and we want the destination. Okay, let's read the destination docs. If destination is a non-existent path, and either dest ends with a slash or source is a directory, dest is created. All right, we might have to fiddle with this to make sure that it stays consistent, not only when the dest directory doesn't exist, but also when it does. Because if we get this wrong, it might try and like create settings within settings within settings and just keep doing that forever. So I think the way I read that, if I read it correctly, was to include the slash. So we'll say destination is going to be serve apps, and I'm going to give it the same name like that. I think that's what I want. And we want to set the owner, because this is going to be a root task to put it in there, but we want to have a different owner. We want the owner to be the account that I can actually run the server, so the www data account, and we want the group to be the same thing. I'm pretty sure that goes, those are settings. Owner, yep, there's owner, and there's group. Am I missing anything? Is there any other copy modules in here? Yeah, there's a mode there. That's the only other one. Let's search for copy in the playbooks, see if I have any others. Wow, it's a big log there. Put some in the load balancer. Okay. It sets the mode. Okay. We should probably set a mode to be safe. Where'd it go? Here it is. So we'll set the mode to be 0750. It's going to have the same problem as not going to be able to, yeah, the Vagrant user is not going to be able to read that. And we're going to be scratching our heads of why is that. So I'm going to use, for now, I'm going to use 755, but I don't think that's what I want long term. I just want to get this proven that it will work. And then once we get, so I'll leave the to-do in there for a while, and like I'm not going to deploy this, but once we get that working and hooked into supervisor and can see that the app is executing like on the browser, then I can lock down the permissions and make it so that Vagrant can't as easily execute it, because I don't think I'll need it. Yeah, so feel decent about that. So this is still not going to fully work because it won't have the secrets. So it's actually, I want to see that. I want to see it fail. Oh, okay. Well, let's see if it even, let's see how far we get. Because it's also possible that we didn't even copy the right directory or didn't get the path right. So it could crash and burn even on that step. I hope not, because I don't know how else to reference the path properly. I guess the other thing would be to assume that it's a path from where the playbook is, but that would seem pretty weird. See, these are the kinds of steps that I want to get out of this deployment process, building the front end, actually building the JavaScript, because all that stuff takes time. Could not find or access /settings. All right, so it's going to tell us where it's searched. And Ansible is cool, except for its errors are pretty terrible, because it dumps it out into a single string and it's hard to see. One thing I often do is I will paste it into Vim, and then I'll do a substitution, but I always have to remember the substitution syntax of I want to replace the new lines with a carriage return. Yeah, cool. So it looked, okay. This is where it looked. So it uses the playbooks. Well, it uses a lot of paths. So it tries to find from files first, and then goes from paths up above. And none of them have settings, which makes sense. The only one that would is this final path. So if we put a ... here, that will say go up to the conductor directory and then find the settings. So I think that should fix it. That's my hope. So quit this, got the error message out of that, and we'll try it again. Another thing that I'm not crazy about Ansible is that I'm running through essentially the whole deployment on staging in order to test out one play. If your deployment is long, that gets even worse naturally. Well, unless you're testing the task at the beginning of the deployment. But if you're trying to test a particular task that's way late in the deployment, I've not found a good method of doing that. If someone knows better methods of testing individual Ansible tasks on a server, I would be all for that. Although I could do the search too. It's probably not hard. It's a big project, so it's easy to like miss things that are in there because it's so huge. So the success of this would be that settings would be copied in there, cranked right through it. So let's go check. There's a settings directory, and ooh, not what we wanted. Because it did exactly what I said. Well, is that right? Yeah, it did what I said not to do. To go into settings, the settings are in settings, which isn't cool. But I can tell it copied it from the right place because it's got the swap file from my local operating system. A .swp file is from Vim, my text editor. So I know it's at least coming from the right area. And hold on one second, I'm gonna check the secrets file to see what's in there. So I've hidden things because it has secrets in it. Yeah, this is all like local stuff on that operating system. Okay, so let's switch back to there. Now you should be able to see. And we don't want this behavior. So this was not right. We want a behavior that says copy the content of settings into a directory. And so probably the way to do this so that we don't have weird behavior between does the directory exist or not exist is to make the directory a step prior. So we'll say we're going to use the same file module that you used earlier. Coming up here, I'm just going to steal this and we'll put it here. And we'll say create settings directory. So it still needs to needs to elevate permissions. The difference is it's going to be directory, and the path is going to be settings. Same owner, same group. For now, same permissions on the directory. Okay, so now we want to change the behavior of the copy. Let's go back and make sure we read the docs well enough. If the path ends with /, only inside contents of that directory are copied to the destination. That's what we want. So we want to say, take all of the content of settings and put it in destination. And I think I want to drop the / there. Okay, so let's get above here, whoops, and remove that settings directory. So blank slate again. So it's going to be a 1-2 punch now, where it's going to create the settings directory first, and then hopefully just take the content from my local stuff and copy it in there, so it doesn't ever deal with nesting stuff. And we might need to run the deploy twice in order to confirm that behavior. That's the way of things. So the other bit that needs to happen is we have this secrets task. This is important. What's happening here is Ansible takes the vault. The vault is all of the secrets that have to be encrypted because I store them on a public repository. So all of the keys, all of that stuff, and that's encrypted by a key, a private key pair that I have on my machine. So when I do a deployment, it unlocks the vault, gets out all of those secrets, and uses the template command here. And the template command then creates a secrets file. And you can see here it's using this underscore secrets. That is the template, which I can show you. That's specifically designed to like be the output file, but with placeholders. So there's nothing secret in it. So all of the stuff like Postgres password, all of this stuff lives in my vault file, which you can't view if you go to my public repository, or you can view the file, but it's all encrypted text, so it's not plain text. And it inserts them in here, which is why I have to hide the screen whenever I try and open that file and check it out, because at that point it's the secrets just on disk. And there's debate about whether that's good or not. Well, the debate more is about environment variables and whether the environment variables are good for managing secrets. And a lot of a common methodology that I've used before is to put your secrets in environment variables and then make your settings file read the environment variables. I've moved away from that for now, because there's an argument to be said that if someone is able to find a way to get your code to dump out the environment, then it would expose all your secrets. Well, if somebody manages to dump out your environment, they probably have access to do lots of things. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it. Okay, so now we have settings. Now all the content is in there. Wow, it's all executable, which I don't want. So that copy is not right. Okay. Yeah, it's putting the executable bit on all of these files, which none of them need that. That's not correct. So when we copy the settings over, let's take off the executable bit. So the executable is the last bit, which means 7 becomes 6, 5 becomes 4, and so on. So now the content, if we did that again, those files would be regular files and not executable. And the app needs to be able to read them, but it doesn't have to execute them. The other thing I left out here is if we're copying settings in here, we need to be able to restart the supervisor. Because if I ever change any of the settings, that copy needs to restart the app, which is controlled by supervisor, which is a process manager. Okay, we're getting down to the end here. I think the next thing to do is copy this guy. And it's the same thing. I'm effectively duplicating functionality right now because I'm trying to keep both versions of the app running until I'm confident that this method works. So I'm going to give it the same name. There's nothing wrong with that name, but I'm going to change the path. And the path is now going to be serve apps settings. And otherwise it's going to have the same behavior. Let's move the become up. I don't know why I have it down there for this particular command. It shouldn't be. So this will go through that process of using this template, filling it in and putting it in that location. And if that is all correct, then that should be everything we need. So this will hopefully be the last provision. And that will check the box, and we can check out how much is left on that milestone. After we have the settings working properly, then the thing we move on to after that is, what is it? We need to hook it into Supervisor, the actual process manager. Right now it's still running uWSGI. And when we hook it into Supervisor, that's the cutover. That's switching from the old mode to the new mode. So we've been doing all this work to build up to that cutover. And we'll test it out on staging. We'll make sure that the settings that get passed into, I'm switching web servers in this process too, from uWSGI to gUnicorn. And there's some settings we're gonna have to set on that to make sure that it goes to a log file, and that sort of business. And then I think we'll be like ready to deploy and move on to the next aspect of this task. There's a lot of pieces in here. We haven't actually removed anything yet, so the deployment process is actually kind of bloating first, and then it will contract after it's done. And then when in that contraction will contract past where it started and be a smaller thing. All right, so we are back to having a settings directory. I'm going to switch over to the secret mode again. The secrets file should be much bigger this time. I think I can tell it's already different because those files are not executable. Yeah, it's full of secrets and stuff that would make it run. And so we're back to where we need to be. Because of the mode, I should be able to run this as the Vagrant user. So let's try it out. We need bind 0000 at port 8000. Awesome. Good news is here it didn't fail by the settings, so that's the thing we want. If we actually try to do curl on this right now, I know it would fail because that was the thing we debugged last week. It turned out there was a permissions problem. The static files, the manifest that this app wants to actually read the static files is in a directory that the Vagrant user does not have permissions to look at. And the static file systems just swallows that error and you can't see it. So I trust that this works, but then simultaneously I know that it doesn't work if we actually tried to execute it because it would run into that same bug. But when we put this into Supervisor, that constraint will be gone. So, trying to think, that probably is a good stopping point for the night. Rather than getting into too much of Supervisor, well, let's claim victory. Maybe check out the milestone. I probably need to add another sub item to this because I doubt we mentioned moving over to Supervisor. Although it says switch from uWSGI to gUnicorn, so yeah, all right, cool. Then we'll declare victory then. So we've got the settings under serve apps. We've done everything on this issue, and I'll clean up, well, just so you can see how all the sausage is made. Let's review this and make sure it's polished the right way so that we can actually commit it. We need to clean up those to-dos, and I don't want this to be world executable, so I'm going to change that to a 0, which says like everybody else can't do anything with it unless you're part of the owner or the group or the root user. The other thing is this one, same problem. I want to not have it be world readable. And there was one more to do in here. Oh, there were two more, but that's something else. we want to set the app to the proper executable mode of 750. Okay. So what does that give us? We did, what do? We set the app to be executable into its destination area, which is serve apps, then the name of it. We created the settings directory, and this makes sure that it exists every time and it's in the right mode. And we copied all the contents from the local settings that are on the clone into the settings at the remote location, which includes PyCache, but the PyCache is going to get wiped out when it realizes it doesn't match. And it also includes the local secrets, but that also is going to get wiped out by this next command that uses the templates to create the secrets file. All three of, well, at least these two cause triggers of, cause the restart notification to happen for supervisor, so that anytime that we modify the settings in the future, that it will force a restart of supervisor. So I'm going to add that and commit it. And we'll say make, remember this is a Shiv app if you think way back, make Shiv app executable and add settings to apps area, apps directory. And this fixes whatever number that was. Fixes 383. Push that up. Okay. So by using fixes, it signals to GitHub to close the issue. So we've got this commit that I just made, and the issue is now closed. And let's come in here and add some notes about how we're going to do this, because this is just, I didn't put any sort of description. So we want to update the supervisor D config to point at the Shiv app instead of executing uWhiskey. And so that's the ultimate goal for this one. There's another, we have some other items here of what else do we need to do? We need to set Unicorn configuration, which I think will minimally mean the break port, set the port, and how we're going to do logging. We need logging to go out to a file so that we'll all do that properly, but that's going to be part of this. There's a bit more to this too, now that I think more on this. The way the system is architected is Nginx is the entry point to the whole website. So when you go to collegeconductor.com, the first piece of software you hit is Nginx. There's probably a bunch of software you hit, the kernel and whole stuff. First piece of user land software that you hit is Nginx to handle the request. And that currently hands off to uWhiskey to do the dynamic stuff, unless it's a static file, which it serves in its own way. But the way it's connected to uWhiskey is over a socket. And there's a set of uWhiskey configuration that is not going to be relevant anymore because we're switching to Unicorn. So we need to update the Nginx config to talk to Unicorn. So because what's really happening is Supervisor is managing and making sure that GUnicorn or the application server stays up and running, but the actual talking, Supervisor is not doing any of the mediation between GUnicorn and Nginx, which is acting as the load balancer. We have to do that ourselves. So those will be the 3 things that go into this. Now that we have the app working and all the settings handled. And it kind of brings us to the end of the stream for the evening. This is where we'll pick up, not next week. I'm actually giving a talk at Python Frederick next week in my town. I'm an organizer for there, and we're gonna do a Git and GitHub talk, kind of giving fundamentals to those people that I'll put up on YouTube if you want to catch me there, if you're into that kind of training. But I won't be able to stream because it's on the same night as I would normally be streaming. I will post this video on YouTube, so if you want to get into the details of what I did or review anything else, that'll be available as well. You're welcome to follow me on social media. I have the same username on Twitter that I do on GitHub of mblayman, and you can catch up with me there, or message me or ask me questions. I'm happy to answer them. If you like the content, please do follow, subscribe, or like whatever the right action is, depending on whether you're on Twitch or YouTube. I would greatly appreciate it. If you have any feedback for me, want me to do something differently, not understanding something but didn't have time to ask the question in the right way, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll do my best to answer it. I appreciate you for tuning in, and with that, I'll bid you good night. Take care.